What is up, guys? Welcome back to another Dead by Daylight video. I'm sorry if I sound a little bit weird, I just woke up. But the Houndmaster has officially been released into Dead by Daylight, and I've been playing her for the past 2 days. And my final thoughts right now are she is one of the most unreliable and one of the most just not able to be played killers in the game. Now, when she first released on her PTB, I had very high hopes. I saw the concept of power, and I did believe that as long as she just got some buffs and some changes and some quality of life improvements, she would actually be a very good killer. And I still see that, but, you know, the saying of, they didn't change anything from PTB to live, it feels the exact same way, especially since the day before the chapter dropped, they released patch notes to tell us what they are changing, and it was like 3 sentences long. Like, they literally changed, like, basically nothing. They changed some cooldown things, which is nice, but it was literally basically nothing. Now, let me, quickly just give you a rundown of how this killer's power works, in case you haven't played them or seen gameplay of them yet. So, the way the Houndmaster's power works is she has her dog Snug, and her dog Snug has 2 abilities, which are the chase and the search. With the chase, you are able to send the dog towards a survivor, and if the dog grabs a survivor, they will become detained, which allows you to catch up to them and hit them, similar to a killer like Pinhead. And if you miss the first dash of the dog, you have a redirect, which lets you manually change the direction the dog goes, so that way you basically have kind of like 2 Wesker dashes to be able to hit a survivor. And then you have search, and search is basically, you can send the dog to a generator, a totem, an exit gate, pretty much any interactable thing survivors can use that has a aura to it. You can send the dog to it. You can even send them to completed generators. And when you send the dog over there, you can actually follow a trail the dog leads to give you haste. Basically just making it easier to catch up to people when you send the dog there. And if somebody gets detected by the dog's radius it has while it's going to that said location, they get affected by Hound Sense. And Hound Sense, all it really does is basically make it so if somebody gets injured, they become deep wounded. And that's the entire killer's power. The killer's power is very simple, straight to the point, and I like it. I like the idea of it, but it doesn't work in most situations. I played for 4 hours on the first day that it came out, and I played for almost 4 hours on the stream of the PTB when the PTB came out. And then I spent all of yesterday trying to learn more of the killer and play more of the killer, and I'm pretty much just accepted that in her current state, she just doesn't work. She, like, you can get value out of her, but she just doesn't work majority of the time. So, and those are pretty much all the positives I can really say, other than, like, I do like her lore, and I do like her outfit, and I like the idea of her being like a pirate. I know a lot of people are very mixed about that, saying like, oh, it works, oh, it doesn't work. It's just like what you think. To me, I think it works, and I think it's actually pretty cool. And I think all the perks from Killer and Survivor are all really good. Like, they do change a lot to the game, and they actually add a lot more to the gameplay. But those are the only real positives I can get from this entire chapter. So let's get into the negatives that I've been noticing. So for one, there was no new map or anything with this DLC, which I totally understand, but I was at least hoping that they did something like Skull Merchant, where they at least went into a map and added something for this killer to make this killer at least like look like as if they came into the game naturally. Kind of like, during the entire time this killer's been getting shown off, they had all these trailers and all this gameplay of her in the swamp map. And in the trailer, they had a version of the swamp that looks like it was like an updated version, and we still didn't get anything related to that. But that's just like a personal, that's just a personal issue I have, because I always wanted something original to come out of this killer in terms of maps. Now, in terms of the negatives in her actual gameplay, The dog is still very janky from the PTBs. The dog is still just very, very buggy. It does not work in a lot of scenarios. One issue I've always had with the dog since PTB is that even though the dog can curve around loops, it doesn't curve in the way you imagine. When it curves, it just curves around it and then keeps going in a straight line. Which, to that, I kind of get it, but it's still just annoying because when I assume that it can curve around things, I expect it to go around the loop and not just through it and then straight ahead. Now, but even if that's the case, the dog sometimes just doesn't go the way that you put it to go. Sometimes you'll tell the dog to go around a loop and it just doesn't go there. It'll just go in a completely different direction if the fucking objects on the map aren't lined up correctly in that set path. And sometimes the dog just won't even start chasing at all. Sometimes if there's a slight elevation in the ground and you send the dog out there, the dog sometimes just won't go anywhere. Dog will just get sunk. And I noticed this severely on the game, because on the map, the game, by the way, on the game, on the downstairs area, they have these little elevations in the ground every time there's like a big door. And sometimes you send the dog through those and the dog just stops moving. He just doesn't go anywhere. And on top of that, if you try to send the dog upstairs, sometimes the dog will get clipped on the side of the stair and once again just stop going. And if you try to redirect it, it's pretty much fucking over because it takes so long to be able to make that redirect point that the survivor's gonna either be able to get behind cover or they're just gonna be so far that you're not gonna be able to fucking hit them. So either way, the fucking dog chasing them just doesn't work. And there's been so many situations that I've had where you can send them, where pretty much at pallets, the dog is useless. In a lot of situations, the dog at pallets, just, you can't use it. You're better off just playing like Blight or something, where you're just playing like an M1 killer at loops, and you just can't do much. And that's just kind of the reality of it. And a lot of the issues, even if you ignore those issues about the dog even being able to hit them, there's issues with the dog even touching them. Because, so one thing that people were able to figure out is the way the dog works is whenever the dog grabs a survivor, the whole idea is that it is supposed to pull them towards you. And technically it is, but the way it's supposed to work is it's supposed to pull the survivor towards where you first sent the dog out. Basically meaning that if you send the dog out but then move away from the position you were in, it's still going to try and pull the survivor towards the position that you first sent the dog out in. And in some situations, that's fine, because there's some situations like pallet loops or just a really big map where you can be able to cut around to get to the survivor easier. But sometimes, if there is stuff in the way of that original path that the dog went, sometimes the dog will go around the longest route imaginable just to go back. Meaning sometimes the dog will work against you and go in the complete opposite direction of you just because in its mind it's trying to meet back at where you first sent him out. Which again, to an extent, that's fine, but it doesn't like pull the survivor hard enough to where it actually feels like it's pulling them, because the survivor also has a lot of control over this dog and it just doesn't feel like it works. And there's also just a lot of scenarios where the survivors can just hold the dog for themselves basically until they get resisted off. And it doesn't feel like you can work with this dog a lot of the time. Whenever, even if they do grab somebody, you still have to work for yourself against it to try and be able to just even hit a survivor. And, you know, one benefit the dog does have is that if a survivor vaults a window or a pallet when you send the dog at them, it kind of does something similar to Wesker where it will injure them instantly. But even that has its own jank to where it sometimes just vaults the pallet or window with the survivor, and then it doesn't even injure them. It doesn't even grab them. It doesn't do anything. So it's like, it really just feels like this dog has a mind of its own, and it just doesn't work for you, which I get it. Like, it's like, it just doesn't feel reliable. And then when a dog does grab a survivor, the survivor has the option to resist, similar to Deathslinger, where if they just move around a bunch, they will eventually get off the dog. Or a survivor teammate can walk up to them and push the dog off of them. which I think makes sense. And you can also have a survivor teammate stun the dog with a pallet to get it off of you, which I think makes sense. As well as if you send the dog at somebody and they drop a pallet, they can stun the dog before it even touches them. That's another thing that I think makes sense. What I don't think makes sense, though, is why a survivor is able to stun the dog with a pallet when they are the one detained. The whole idea of being detained is like Deathslinger and Pinhead, where you can't do anything but try to resist. You can't do anything. So why are they able to get themselves out of the power by just throwing a pallet down? And like, my friend Gage I was talking to about this, he told me that while he does see the issue in that, he also does see the benefit because technically they're wasting pallets. But if that's the case, and they want people to do it like that so the killer can just break a bunch of pallets, the killer's just gonna be wasting time breaking pallets all game. They're not gonna be chasing people. So like, it doesn't feel like Behavior really thought about it and thought about just how weak this killer was gonna be in chase, and they gave them counters to their ability that just make no sense. Like, I get survivor teammates having to help the person, similar to like Victor or something, but I don't think it makes sense for a survivor who is literally detained by the dog to be able to save themselves with a pallet. I think like that is the biggest issue that I had with this killer, because no matter how good of a play you can make, if the survivor can move to a pallet quick enough and throw it, your power is on cooldown and you don't get a hit and you are just fucked. And it didn't feel fun, because there's so many maps and there's so many bugged maps that have significantly more pallets than they should, and it just felt like this killer was just going through pallet hell most of the time. Like, you're better off just running a Spirit Fury Enduring build on this killer by this point, because you're gonna be breaking pallets most of the game, because that's what survivors used most to counter this killer. And it didn't feel fun. It didn't feel engaging. It felt just like a waste of time every single time. And it doesn't matter how good of a play you make. The survivor can just throw down a pallet and everything you did is funked. And it's so stupid. And I don't think Behavior really did anything to her power. She's still janky and she's still broken. Now, those are the main issues with the chase. And I know you might be thinking there's probably no issues with the search. And there's not as many issues with the search as there is with the chase, but I do still have some personal little things that I think should be changed for quality of life. Which, first off, I think the first change they should do is allow you to manually call the dog back if you feel like you don't need him to go to a certain location. Because there's a lot of times where you'll send the dog to a location and then find a survivor immediately, and then you just don't have a power for like 2 minutes because the dog is fucking on the other side of the map from you looking for somebody that's not even there. So it's like you're better off just like being able to manually call back the dog, even if it takes a longer cooldown. You're better off just having the dog come back to you, just so that way you at least have him for the chase that you like found. And another issue with it is that sometimes the dog takes just the longest route imaginable to get to a certain location. So by the time the person gets to the dog gets to the gen, sometimes the gen will already get done. So there's just no fucking point. And it doesn't feel like that is super reliable either. And then sometimes the dog will just stop moving sometimes. Sometimes you'll send the dog to a location and it'll just stop moving for whatever reason. Like, it just doesn't work. And somehow the search is still just as bad as the chase. And it's ridiculous. And like, the haste that you get from it is nice, but like, it's only when you're sitting in that trail. You don't get any lingering haste for a couple seconds when you leave. It's only when you're in that trail of the dog. So you can't like use the haste to like go to another location while the dog is going somewhere else to kind of split pressure. You're in the end just kind of funked in that regard. And the dog doesn't really give you any benefits even when it catches a survivor in an area with a generator. It doesn't scare them off. It doesn't force them off. It doesn't do anything but reveal their killer instinct and give them Hound Sense. And Hound Sense is practically fucking useless. So in the end, if the dog catches a survivor, the survivors could just sit there. The only thing that they have to worry about if the dog finds them is the killer speeding up to that generator. But most of the time, if you're sending them across the map, they're gonna be able to get the gen done anyways. So it doesn't feel like I have a reason to use these things. The chase ability feels buggy as hell, and there's too many counters to it, like being able to stun them with pallets, or even fall off. That's another thing I forgot to mention. Survivors can get the dog off of them by just dropping off of a ledge, which is legitimately the most frustrating thing ever, because why? Why should the survivor be able to get the dog off of them just by dropping off of something? That's not how it works with other killers, like Deathslinger, and as far as I know, I don't think Pinhead does something like that unless you break the chain on the environment. Why should the survivor get the dog off of them just from falling? That doesn't make any sense, and neither does them stunning the pallet on themselves when they're the ones being detained. It doesn't make sense. And then the search has its own other issues, where it's just not really that strong to use, and you don't get benefits from it. And it's like, this killer overall just feels like you're doing way more effort for not nearly as much value. It just feels like you're doing way too much for way too little. A high risk with a low reward, basically. And like, it's not fun. I don't find the killer reliable. I don't find the killer fun in their current state. I really want to like this killer. I really do. Because I do enjoy this killer's playstyle, and I do enjoy just using the power, but using the power is the most fucking stupid part of it. Like, it doesn't work. And then on top of just all the other bugs that she has with her and her dog that aren't just the power being janky and not working, it's just not worth it to me right now. I don't think anybody should be playing this killer right now. I suggest just wait for at least a few more weeks, or maybe like the next month, because I know they're going to push out another patch where they need to fix her. I don't think this is an unfixable situation. I think they can make her better, but they need to fix her. They need to make her better. They need to give her a bunch of quality of life changes and just flat out buffs, because they clearly didn't do that when they brought her into the live game. They literally wrote 3 sentences of changes, and that's it. They really need to fix her and just give her reasons to be used, because right now this is just one of those killers where it's like, oh, I'm not gonna play her because I could play Pinhead or Deathslinger. It's just not fun. It's not fun, and it's not engaging. It's just the simple mind game of wait for the dog to go one direction, hide behind something if she chooses to redirect. If she chooses to use the search, you just don't do anything because it doesn't affect you. And it's like, yes, I do know that if a survivor gets the dog off of them, they do get hindered. But the hindered is not noticeable. I've played killer and survivor against this killer, and I've not, like, the hindered is so little it's practically not noticed. And with how stupid some maps are with pallets, the hindered doesn't matter. You can just get to another one. So it's just not worth it to play this killer in her current state. And I still want to play her because I want to enjoy her. And I do feel like this is going to be another one of those killers where people are still going to play her regardless of how she is, just because they like her, and I understand that. I'm like that with a lot of killers. That's why I like the Legion so much. The Legion's not a good killer, but I still play them just because I like them. And I really want to like this killer. But in her current state, she's so janky, and she's so buggy, and she's so unreliable that you can't do anything with her. You just physically can't. And, like, the only real reason you would get this chapter right now is for the perks. The perks are easily the best part of this chapter. The Survivor is pretty cool, and I do like the lore of the Survivor, and I like the cosmetics for both Killer and Survivor. Except for the one Killer cosmetic that costs $20 fucking that doesn't do anything but change lobby animations. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Oh, but you get a unique dog cosmetic. Who fucking cares? Like, like, nobody fucking cares about getting a different dog skin for $20, dude. Nobody cares. That's just a waste of money at that point. And for a skin, no less. It doesn't change the Mori, doesn't change really anything with her ability. It just changes some animations and maybe gives her new dialogue. I don't know, because I didn't get it, because I wasn't going to spend $20 on that shit. And I do think the Survivor has some pretty cool skins as well, and I do like the perks between both sides. I've already come up with builds to use all these perks on both sides. There is a lot of good to this chapter. There is a lot of good things. But the worst thing of all is just the killer. Like, I'm starting to I feel like I'm starting to have a whole nother thought about Skull Merchant again, because this is the same thing with Skull Merchant. There was some good in the chapter, but the killer's power was the worst part of it. And that's how I feel with this chapter, as I really like everything this chapter has going for it, but I don't like the killer's power right now. It's not fun, it's too buggy, it's just one of the most unreliable abilities that you can have, because you can have a match where you just absolutely pop off, and the dog works in every single command you tell it to, and it's fine. And then the next match, the dog will practically just do nothing and then get stunk for most of the game. And then by that point, you're just fucked. So it's unreliable. It's very 50-50 on how your game's gonna go with this. And against even just decent survivors that maybe have 100 hours at most, this killer's still gonna get fucking stomped on by them, because the power is just so buggy and so easy to deal with that even the most competent bare bone basic survivors can deal with it. And it's just that's not a good sign when even some of the lowest level of players can deal with it. I mean, it is a good sign because it means that newer players can face her easier, but this killer should also be able to be used against more high tier survivors. And against high tier survivors, it's pretty much just unreliable. You're literally better off just playing literally anybody. And I've seen people compare this killer to Skull Merchant, and I'm like, Skull Merchant's not even a bar that can be compared to. Skull Merchant is that bad. Skull Merchant is so bad right now that she's not even willing to be compared to any other killer. I do think this killer is better than Skull Merchant. I think this killer's leagues better than Skull Merchant in every way. But I don't think that I still don't think she's worth playing right now. I think you're better off just waiting for her to get fixed, or waiting for the big major patch that gets changed, where she gets a bunch of buffs and stuff. Or just go play Deathslinger or Pithead if you want a similar experience. Because at least with Pithead, he has a better map control thing with the box, and Deathslinger might not have map control, but he just has the stronger power. So it's there's just so many other options you can do instead of this killer. And that really sucks. I like when there's a killer that's so unique to the point that there's little to no reason to not play them. They give you a lot of reasons to play them. But with this killer, there's just not a lot of reason to play them right now. And I say right now because, yeah, I think you should play them eventually, but just not in her day one state. I think some people just need to wait for the bug fix patches, wait for the buffs, wait for the quality of life changes, and then potentially give her a shot. Because I'm still gonna play her just to see if there's any playstyles that are more effective, but I'm hoping that whatever buffs or quality of life changes they do really just help her as just a killer. Because right now she is just not worth it to play, and she's just not good, and she's very unreliable, and that's really sad because I want to like her. I want to like her, I want to like this chapter, I want to like everything, and I do like majority of things. I do like everything, and I do like the killer in some ways, but I don't like playing her and using the janky, unreliable ability. But yeah, that's basically where I'm gonna leave it. Overall, right now, just if you want to get the DLC, go for it. But I don't think you should play the killer. I think you should at least get her perks and then use her perks on other killers, because, like I said, there's a lot of unique builds you can use her perks for. And I do think that people should use those perks from her and the Survivor's perks, because the Survivor has some pretty good perks too. The chapter is not a flop. I don't think the chapter is going to be a flop. But unless they fix this killer, unless they give this killer some buffs and fix her, I don't think she's going to be one of the more high pick rated killers. Because people are just not going to have a reason to play her if they can't use her power efficiently and consistently. Because their power is just so inconsistent that it's practically just, it's just unreliable. But yeah, that's just where I'm gonna leave this little rant. I know I do apologize for it, but yeah, though I had to get my opinion out there because I played her on day one, and it was pretty obvious with how frustrated I was getting. If some people were watching the stream, it was pretty obvious to tell how frustrated I was getting with her. But I had to play her again just to get my second opinions, and yeah, no, she's just unreliable right now. She's just not good, and I don't think behavior. Unless behavior fixes her, I don't think that she's gonna be good anytime soon. So, I appreciate you guys for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new for more DBD related videos. If you want to check out my other DBD content I have, we just posted a new song about 2v8 with me and my friend Anthony. You can also check out all my Dead by Daylight stream VODs on my channel, where I just have all the stream VODs of when I played live. I'm trying to do more live streams more consistently between the time that I'm making videos, just so that way I have content to put out for you guys, whether doesn't matter what game I'm playing, I'm just trying to stream for more of you guys. But yeah, that's where I'm gonna leave it. This killer really needs to be fixed. She really does. If they want her to actually be used, she needs to be fixed. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Just die.